Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, Conference Edition. In this podcast, we spotlight upcoming Cold Fusion conferences and talk to organizers, workshop trainers, and speakers to uncover all the information you and your company needs to decide what conferences and workshops to attend and what sessions you need to see. Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, Conference Edition. And today I'm talking with John Clausen about his workshop at Into the Box in May. And so, John, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So your workshop is containerizing CFML applications. So you want to tell us a little more about it?
Well, as we all know and are aware at this point, if you're not aware, you're kind of living in a tunnel or something. But the container space just continues to expand and blow up, and there are a lot of options available to you now. And even since last year, we've got more expanded usage of a lot of different containerization strategies. What we want to do is provide one day of giving users, CFML developers, an opportunity to understand how to containerize their applications. What are the logistics of it? Software, hardware requirements, things like that. How to actually deploy your code in those containers, and then how to handle consistency between multiple tiers of your application's deployment. So from development to staging to production. And so we'll start off the day by giving you an overview to containers, and then as we go through the day, we'll actually do more and more things with it, to the point where by the end of the session, you will have started the process, or possibly even have finished the process of containerizing one of your own applications with its dependencies in a stacked environment. So it's a very hands-on workshop. There's certainly a lot of information, so it's come prepared to learn. But it's also something that I think a lot of developers who have taken the workshops in the past have found very useful and has helped to jumpstart them in their own containerization strategies.
So obviously you mentioned on it, containerization is big these days. Is there anything else that you think people should know? Like, why is this workshop really important for CFML developers or developers in general?
Well, I think that for CFML developers in general, I think that there's many of us who've been developing the language for a long time who started on, bare metal hardware, big old monolithic servers where all of our dependencies were packaged in one. And I think I don't know that 5 years from now you're going to have the tools you need to do your job, especially if you're a full stack CFML developer, without at least understanding containers. So I think that's part of it. I think that it's an important technology to learn. It's an important technology to master. Although we're not going to be able to master it one day, but you should be at least on a path to help you do that. And I think that's a big part of it. I think for developers in general, I think that when you containerize your application stack, it contributes to a lot more worry-free code. It contributes to agile development in the sense that small iterations are tested and ready to go and pass all their health checks, and they perform the same way in every tier before they're deployed. So I actually think that I find it to be essential. I think there's folks that have stinking thinking about it in one way or another, but I find containerization to be essential to keep the consistency between deployment tiers solid, and then also be able to introduce new features in a way that's much less worry-free, because I don't have to worry about the environmental aspects.
Yeah, another thing that I mentioned too that, just I'll throw my 2 cents in here, but with Docker, it really takes away some of the bad baggage that Cold Fusion has, because a lot of companies these days, they don't know how to maintain it, they don't know how to deploy it, and a lot of tech feedback we hear anyway is that they've got these apps and their DevOps people don't want to support them. But once you Dockerize it and make it, here it's a container, go deploy it, they know how to do that. They know how to maintain it. They know how to deploy them and orchestrate them. And so I think it can actually help companies keep working with Cold Fusion when they're getting to this DevOps age where everyone seems to think it's a dinosaur. So I've noticed a lot of people. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just saying, I think a lot of people, they're used to these old monolithic installations, and I think the days of the monolithic server are dead, if not dying quickly. And I think that, containerization makes that very easy. It makes CFML apps viable again. And with, open source technology like Lucy and some of the containerization licensing like that Adobe has, it's a real option for people to use.
Yeah, especially with the 2020 updates coming out, where they're working on modularity and smaller install sizes and everything. They're definitely moving that way because they know it's important. And so,
well, and not to mention the fact that now in Command Box, and this will be by the time we do Into the Box, there'll be a release on this. In Command Box, you can actually generate a Bash script that bypasses the need to actually even use Command Box in your containers. It's a straight script. So previously, if you wanted to start a server with Command Box, it was Java and Java, right? That's no longer necessary because we're actually able to generate a script, wipe Command Box completely from the container, and then actually use that one script to run that Java process. And it's slick.
Very cool. Yeah. So I guess that leads right into the next question. So why are you the right person to lead this workshop?
Well, I guess that's probably just because I got on the containerization bandwagon at Ortus earlier than everybody. I guess I think that, I'm not going to honk my own horn here, toot my own horn. But I think that, I've spent quite a bit of time in this space from the earliest development of the Docker command box images. I've done extensive use of Docker, personally and also professionally. And day in and day out, I work with it. I mean, I don't use any other development environments when I code in CFML anymore. All of my database servers, caching servers, Elasticsearch, everything is all containerized. So I think I've got a fair amount of knowledge to bring to the subject, and I also have some tremendous team members who will be helping out during the day to help with some of the more environmental specific things. So I think it's a team effort, but I'm happy to lead it.
Yeah, I mean, you've done some great work on the Docker images, and we've compared to Lucy images and Adobe's images and everything. And I mean, obviously we use them all the time. So as we come up against some hurdle, you guys update these Docker images for Command Box to handle everything we want and need. And I mean, it's like secrets are built in, and it's just such a smooth workflow. And yeah, you guys do a lot of great work on that and keeping up on date as new stuff rolls out too. So, I mean,
well, and I think there's a couple tools now that we have now that we didn't even have when we started with the Docker images. And we've got CFconfig, which basically allows you to pre-configure an entire server. There's no need to move files into the file system and deal with XML files and stuff like that. Where with the Lucy containers, you can just boom, have your production config and then use environment variables in that. So you can use a combination of hard-coded settings and environment variables, and it just works. And then there's also, between that and .env, which allows you to source in environment variables. We've just got a ton of tools that are available with a command box image, and we use it right now. We're using it in so many different places in production with both Adobe engines and Lucy engines. And then some people are even using it for old Blue Dragon images. So, I mean, because you can run basically any WAR file, any jar file from the command box. So it works pretty well.
Very cool. So if someone's wanting to take your workshop, what type of expectations or prerequisite knowledge does someone have or need to have before they come to really get the most value out of this? Or is it there's a prerequisites there, and one of the things that we need to come with so that you can come prepared to actually do your work on your own computer with your own stack is you're going to need to have a machine that's got at least 16 gigabytes of RAM, just so you can start a stack. 8 will probably do it for you, but if you want to be able to work and be speedy, probably 16 gigs of RAM. You need to make sure that you have Docker installed, the latest version of the Docker engine installed, along with the Docker Compose binary as well. So you'll need to come prepared with some tools, also some code, and maybe if you're going to have a database dependency or any kind of dependency that requires data, bring at least a sample of that data that you can load into a containerized database. Okay, so we'll obviously send out some requirement emails to remind people of those things.
Yeah.
But what about knowledge? So do they need to know what Docker is, or do they need to have any history or?
No, not at all. You can come there. We go through that. Obviously, as the years have gone by, more and more people are at least familiar with the basics of it. So we've customized that a little bit. But yeah, we're gonna talk to you about containers and what they are and how they work and where you can use them and all sorts of information from the get go. So it's not really necessary other than what's necessary to run the installer to install Docker on your machine.
Okay, sounds good. Now, I know that you just did a webinar last week on containerizing CFML applications. Would that be a good thing for them to watch beforehand to get an idea?
Yeah, absolutely. There's about probably 15 minutes of stuff that we cover in that. And there's a bunch of stuff that we kind of go through fast to show people how to do it. So we'll actually have the nice thing about the workshop is we'll have our time to dig into some of those things and what's going on and what's happening with ports and allocation and crosstalk and all that. So there's benefits of the workshop in that, but definitely, please take a look at that. There may be a little bit of review during the day of the workshop, but it's probably 15, 20 minutes review at the most.
Okay, well, that sounds good. I just thought might give them a good taste of what they might get out of the workshop.
Absolutely, without a question.
Okay, so you mentioned a lot of things. Do you want to sort of give us a rundown of what will people learn in the workshop? What should they get, when they leave? What should they be able to do?
Well, by the time you're done, you're going to be able to understand how to take one of your applications, your own personal applications, and containerize it. And you may get all the way there during the course of the workshop, or you may get part of the way there, but you'll at least understand the basics and the fundamentals of how to do it. You'll understand how to how to start and stop a container, how to poke around in the file system of the container, how to configure that container, how to mount your code into a running Docker container, but also how to package your code in building a custom image that's got everything ready to go. So there's a lot of different information we'll cover. We'll also cover some of the basics of deploying stacks and creating stacks with Docker Compose, so that you can see how to package your dependencies for a particular tier like development or environment. We'll talk about stack deployments. We'll talk about Docker Swarm. We'll touch on Kubernetes, although this really isn't a Kubernetes a Kubernetes presentation, but we'll spend some time talking about that and spend some time talking about the different ways in which you can deploy your application and different vehicles to allow you to do that out there.
Okay, sounds good. So what do you think your favorite part about teaching this workshop is?
I think my favorite part is actually usually it comes 2, maybe 3 days later, and sometimes a year later, which is when people have adopted the technology. We've got some of our biggest contributors to that project now. Some of the people who are most active in the containerization community are people that were in that containerization workshop 2 years ago, and they've now gone from learning it to becoming experts, and they're invaluable members of our community. And so it's really the workshop is wonderful, seeing the light bulbs come on in people, and yes, there's some frustration, and it's nice to be able to help people kind of overcome some of the things that frustrate them. But the biggest benefit that I've seen is being able to see people, take the technology and just run with it in their own projects and become adopters and raving fans. And, we've got a lot of community leaders in this container space in the CFML community that are, that started out learning about Docker in that workshop.
Very cool. Yeah, and that's the other thing too I really like about the workshops is you have like a cohort, you've got a group of people, and so they can help each other. And a lot of the times we set up a Slack group for the workshop as well, so people can ask questions later and, touch base. And I always find the best thing when I'm teaching a workshop is that later on, when someone asks a question, other people in the group help answer and they help guide, and you get that teamwork and some camaraderie. So even if you're this is your job and you're on your own to figure it out, you're not on your own when you've made some friends into the box in a workshop or whatnot.
Totally.
So very cool. So this is a one-day workshop like you mentioned, but we're offering on 2 different days. So the beauty of this is if there's something like the Elasticsearch one that you want to take on one day, you can still take John's on the other day and vice versa. So some of the 2-day workshops, you don't get a choice. They're 2 days full of content, but the one-day workshops like this, you can basically pick and choose 2. And John is repeating the workshop, so that way, no matter what you choose on one day, you can always pick John's on the other. So
I'll just pick somebody from the first day and let them teach the second day.
Maybe, yeah. If you're dumb enough to sign up for 2 days, you might be teaching it the second day. How about that? But yeah, so it sounds like a great workshop. I know this is a most popular workshop over the last couple of years. We always seem to sell out. So I know that you're getting a couple extra helpers to make sure we don't, we have a little more room, because it's definitely an in-demand workshop. So
yeah, it'll be good to have 2 days, little smaller groups, and we'll be able to spend a little more one-on-one time with people. So I think breaking into 2 days is a good strategy.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I really appreciate your time, John, and talking to us about your workshop. I know it's going to be great, and hopefully this podcast will give someone, a little more information so they can go sign up at intothebox.org, go get your tickets. And we look forward to seeing everybody in Houston in May.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Okay. Thanks very much, John.
You bet.
Show notes for this episode can be found on conference.modernizerdie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have a link to YouTube playlist to find more videos just like this. Music from this podcast are used under a royalty-free license from sound.com and bluetreeaudio.com.